Oh, jackass, they kick like a fool. They kicked and they kicked and they kicked the wheels, but he had to quit kicking to save his heels. When it runs out of dope, just fill it up with soap, and the little Ford will ramble right along. You can smash the top and smash up the seat. You can twist it out of shape till both ends meet. Smash the body and rip out a gear.
I don't know why they had me, for some reason or other. My brother Ronald and I both was born in the same house on the old Shad place. Of course, it's burned down now. New house is there where the old one stood. And I was born in the wintertime. They said it was a mighty cold day when I was born, January the 2nd, 1900. I was the first baby born in that county, the first of the year. And I got a little pair of red shoes as a gift for being born that day. Of course, I had nothing to do about it, but I got the shoes anyhow. They were very good. And Mother and Dad was very proud of me. Grandpa and Grandma was very proud of me. And I guess Grandpa let his dad run all the way up to Grandpa to tell him that they had a son. They didn't have a doctor that time because they couldn't get a doctor out. They're too far away from town, and there's too much snow, and they couldn't get there if they had to. So Ma and Grandma and some of the old neighbor women done a good job of bringing me into the world. And when they weighed me, why, they said I weighed 8 pounds and a half, and it didn't look like much, but I had an awful big mouth and a whale of an appetite. Well, I was born to be a farmer, I guess. The first job I ever had was milking. That's what Ma said anyhow. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention who the heck I'm doing this talking here, but I'm the oldest one, of course, naturally. My name is Laverne Howard Marrison. And, well, we lived on 40 acres of land up there. I'll never forget the time Dad started the building. We began living on this 40 acres of ground. There was woods all the way around us. And Dad was out there working, piling up brush and burning it, and burning up logs and piling up wood. And Ma was out helping. And the house wasn't very warm them days. The upstairs was all open. We didn't have any rooms in it or anything else. Just an open stairway. And one day we heard a commotion upstairs and went up there, and there's a robin up there, built his nest, and there was a big snake trying to get this robin's nest. So Dad killed the snake, and the robin felt pretty good after that, so he joined the family, and we had another one in the family. Of course, it had feathers on it. Most of us didn't, but we needed them in the cold weather we had up there. And well, I guess this is about all, so I'll have to say goodbye for now.
This portion of the tape will be recorded by Roland Eldon Marrison, born May the 12th, 1901, which happened to fall on a Sunday. I don't recall the weight that I was, but I was always a frail little feller. Of course, that might be my version of it. But I'll recall some of the things that happened while we were children. Our main occupation in the spring of the year was going barefoot and running just as hard as we could run when the weather permitted, and going out in the woods and tearing around in the trees. We had 3 trees across from the place. Vern mentioned the place where him and I were born and of the farm where we lived. And some of the things we used to do in these trees will raise the hair on the back of my neck now to think that we would do some of these things. It's a surprise to me that we're all still living when I stop and think back of the things that we done. We didn't have the toys and the things that children do today. We more or less manufactured our own pleasures and ways of playing. For a sleigh, we'd take some planks and saw out a sled, and then we'd get a piece of metal from the top of a wagon box and fasten on for runners, and that would make our sleighs, which we prized very highly up until we'd leave it by the porch, and Pa would fall over it in the night time, and then our sleigh would come up missing for a while. Maybe we'd find it quite some distance from the house where Pa'd thrown it, and then we'd go and get it again, and we'd always forget and leave it where he could fall over it. And from this home where we lived there on the 40 acres, we went to the Hornig Lake, which was about 18 miles from there. We lived there one summer, and then from there we went to Charlevoix. We went by train, and of course my father and my Uncle Delbert, my dad's brother, went by horse and wagon, and it took them quite some time to travel that distance with just a team of old farm horses. We lived one winter near my uncle's, my mother's brother's forests, and a little house that was much much less than a shed. It was all open, had no insulation, and you could lay in bed and look right out and see the stars at night. We'd put newspapers between the blankets to keep the wind from blowing through the blankets. It formed a kind of an insulation. And later on, we moved to a place 100 acres across the lake for about 2 miles from this place. And there we lived for 3 years, done quite a little farming. We had some real good crops there. In the wintertime, we'd cut wood, and then we'd cut logs and wood for a contractor who had contracted some woods there to be sold off. And we worked for this fellow by the name of Mr. C. Then in 1918, at the end of the war, we left there and came to Lansing. We heard that they were hiring quite a few men in the factories, and I was 17 when we came to Lansing. The three of us, the oldest boys, came first to Lansing. We came by way of train from Charlevoix, and after traveling practically all day long, we finally arrived in Lansing, and then not knowing the streets were blocked off in numbers, we started at Michigan Avenue coming up Pennsylvania to find 916, I believe the number was, where my cousin lived rather. And we were looking all the way on up through on Pennsylvania Avenue trying to find the number, supposing that we'd find it pop up most anywhere. We finally got there and stayed, I think it was one night there, and then we rented a house from a lady called Maud Foster, and moved our stuff in, which had come by train. We went to the depot and we hired a drayman with a horses and dray, to move the stuff to this place on Pennsylvania Avenue, which was 728 North Pennsylvania, just north of Saginaw Street. And we got the place for $35 a month. Then the folks came later. That's it.
Emery Marrison.
Harold Marrison. I was born in Mason County, Eden Township in 1902 on the old Bailey farm. Let me see, I lived there until I was about 14, and I moved from there to Charlevoix County and stayed there until about 1918 in Michigan. I had a job in the factory when I was 16 years old. And I worked there for 9 years, and then I was laid off. I went to work for the county and state.
Yeah.